Hey everyone, CPO here, and in this video, we're going to be talking about DSG clutches in my 2019 Go.fast.r. So this comes from a comment in one of my videos that I did on the DSG, one of the early videos, and the guy's pretty adamant that I'm destroying my clutches by having the transmission in sport mode when at a stop, like a stoplight or something like that. So I don't normally do call out videos or argue with my commenters in response videos, but it did get me thinking, like, what does happen with the clutches? And does it matter if you're in sport mode or normal mode, or does putting the car in neutral make a difference? So I already know what I believe to be the truth on this, but it turns out there are people like this commenter who have a very strong opinion on what they believe is right or wrong when it comes to DSG clutches. So I figured the best way to resolve this is just to go out and get some data, because I make data-driven decisions often, and I like sharing what I learn whenever I do collect data. So I'm just out in the car, gonna go run an errand, and I thought this is a perfect opportunity. So what I have here is Simos tools. This is on a little Android tablet, and I've done another video on Simos tools and using my open source dongle. But as you can see here, and I'll put this over the screen, I'm recording this screen as well. The top row is clutch 1, the bottom row is clutch 2. It is a dual clutch transmission after all. And we can see the current, the pressures, and the torque applied to all clutches. So right now I'm in drive mode and normal mode, I guess, and then I can switch it. Now I'm in sport mode, and you can see hopefully what mode I'm in, and then of course I'm telling you, you may be able to see me make the shifts here. So we're gonna do a couple of tests just to see how things change, but I wanted to actually give you some driving footage here so you can see, like, I'm in sport mode, 4th gear, I'm in clutch 2. Clutch 2 is 4th gear. If I switch down, let's say we'll go down to 3rd gear, you can see now clutch 1 is taking over. Clutch 1 is 3rd gear. But you can also sort of see how clutch 2 is preparing to be shifted to, right? It's one of the benefits of the dual clutch. So I'm getting a little bit more pressure and current as I get closer to that shift point, and then it switches. And how fast that switches is dependent upon the tune. I do have an equilibrium tuning DSG tune, and then that also depends on whether I'm in sport or normal mode, is how fast that switch happens. I'll pull into a parking lot here in a second, and we will take a look at the difference between sport mode, drive mode when it comes to being in a stop. Also, we will see if putting the car in neutral makes a difference. We will also see if switching the transmission to manual mode makes a difference. So if you have an opinion right now, please open your mind. Be prepared to be surprised if you're wrong, and vindicated if you are right, because that's how the world works. But also, like, I don't know what your opinion is. You're watching this, you may think that it's best, and there are people who believe that on a dual clutch transmission, it is so much like a manual transmission that you have to put it in neutral at a stop, otherwise you're just grinding on the clutches. If the clutches were engaged when at a stop, the car would die, right? I mean, that if this was a manual transmission, a true manual transmission, and you left the clutch disengaged and you came to a stop in 1st gear and you held the car with the brake, what do you think would happen? The car would die. It would stall out because the clutches are engaged, right? So clearly, in a automatic version of that manual transmission, the dual clutch transmission, when I come to a stop, the clutch has to disengage from the engine, otherwise we would stall out every time we stopped. So that's the common sense perspective, but we'll talk about data here in a second. So I'm just going to pull over to this section of the parking lot where we can experiment just a little bit. It's like a billion speed bumps and speed tables and hoop-de-doops, and they're not making it easy on me. And dog walkers, and what the heck, man? This is a parking lot. All right, so let's just pull over right here. All right, so I am in drive mode. You can see here, and you can see clutch 1 has some engagement. There is some current applied there. There is a little bit of pressure. It's 2.3 bar, and the clutch torque is in the negatives, -9. Clutch 2, which is completely disengaged, has a 50 milliamp current, has pretty much zero pressure applied to it, and is at -74 in torque. Now, I will tell you -74 is the lowest it will go. 0 is the lowest it will go in pressure, and so far, like 37 milliamps is the lowest I've seen on this. So, like, basically operating current is just about 50. When the clutch is being engaged, it goes up, and then more current, more pressure, more torque as it's needed. So you might say, well, gee, sitting here with the car in drive, with a clutch 1 engaged at 2.3 bar of pressure, means the clutch is engaged and you've got current to prove it. But the reality of it is, no, you're at -9 torque, which means you're just off of engagement, right? The whole thing about how this transmission works is it's prepared to be engaged, and it's prepared to swap clutches quickly, so it has to do some work to get really close to engagement, but just off so that that's nearly instant. So if I let off the brake slowly, you will see clutch pressures go up, and now I've got some torque applied. I'm actually engaging the clutch. Now I'm starting to move and I'm rolling off. Right now I'm going to go back on the brake. So even though I don't have a manual clutch, the lifting of the brake tells the transmission that I'm about to go, and it's the equivalent of doing this clutch and brake transition that you would find in a manual transmission. So as I lift off the brake, the clutch is starting to also disengage and apply torque to. Now, if I sat here with my brake half on and half off, yeah, it's like holding the vehicle with the clutch in a manual. Like, it's no different. It's not great for it. It's not disastrous. But with the brake on, the clutch seems to be applying negative torque. It's off of the engagement level. So now, question is, does switching to sport mode change that in a way that has a negative impact? So now, see here, I'm in sport mode. In sport mode, what do we see here? Absolutely zero change. Sport mode does not change how the clutch engagement works. Back to normal, back to sport, you see zero change. It doesn't impact that at all. Now, if I switch to manual mode, which was suggested to me that would be required to preserve my clutch, no change. Doesn't change anything to go into manual mode. Obviously, I'm stuck in one because I'm at a stop. Sport mode, drive mode, no changes with any of that. Now, what happens if we put it in neutral? Ooh, there is a change. All right, so what happened there? Well, we went to zero clutch pressure on both clutches, -74 on both clutches, and then the bare minimum operating current of 50-ish on both clutches. So what we did is we just told the car, look, we're not going anywhere anytime soon. There's no reason to be prepared for engagement. So let's just back off a little bit. So that's what happened. It backed off everything because it's not needing to be ready to move. We put it in drive or sport, and it says, oh, it looks like you might be wanting to go somewhere soon. So let's get really close to engagement on clutch 1, not all the way, but let's get close so that we're ready to go when you are. So yes, putting the car into neutral does completely shut down both clutches, but it doesn't really change the amount of engagement because there is no engagement sitting here with my foot on the brake, right? So maybe that is something new to you. Maybe it's interesting, maybe it's not, but I think it's kind of interesting. So yeah, we are at negative 9 torque. I'm going to take off, and look, torque is growing as we move. We shift to second gear, it moves to clutch 2. Clutch 1 disengages completely. Let's go around here. So back in first gear, second gear. I'm in sport mode, by the way. So it's going to hold on to that second gear a little bit longer. I've got to get through these stupid speed bumps here. Now what's going to happen here is I'm going to, well, come to a stop. Now it's going to switch. Boom, switches right there. As I start driving, clutch 2 is going to start preparing, starts building some pressure. Then we have the switch. Now clutch 1 is going to start building, and then the switch is going to happen. There you go. And I'm not requiring a lot of torque because I'm not applying a lot of torque request on the pedal. None of that changes whether I'm in drive or sport. What changes is the RPMs that these things take place and then how quickly they're going to take place. All right, so I'm in manual mode here. And you can see when I'm off of the other clutch, it's completely depressurized, detorque until I make that change. So I'm going to switch gears. It's going to switch. The other one's going to go to completely off, no pressure. It's going to switch, completely off, no pressure. It's going to flip-flop back and forth. It makes those changes pretty quick. There's a downshift. So I'll just let you look at that for a second here. I'm going to go into sport mode. Everything's exactly the same. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm manually controlling it or if it's controlling itself. But when I come to a stop, like I'm doing right now, clutch 2 completely disengaged, clutch 1 just holding close, just to be ready, so that when I do lift off the brake, it can apply a small, slow, incremental amount of torque, and that's done through additional current, and then which raises the pressures. So that's how that works. Anyway, yeah, DSG, there you go. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you found it interesting, and I'll catch you on the next one.